look at some empirical data on pronoun interpretation, again using our case study of Mexican Spanish. So we looked, this is really my wonderful collaborator, Hannah Forsyth down there in Forsyth and Pearl. Hannah and her team looked at children at ages 3, approximately 3, you'll see more specifically what that spread is, but approximately 3, 4, and approximately 5, and adults. And they asked these participants, children and adults, to interpret pronouns in the kind of context we saw before, where you have a setup like this and you have conflicting cues of particular kinds. And the children, the approximately 3, ranged from just under 2 to 3. The 4-year-olds were 4-year-olds, the 5-year-olds were 5 and 6-year-olds, and the adults were adults, right? So it's our range, but approximately 3, 4, and 5, and adults. So these are our participants. And then what we are looking for, what we're asking them to do, is the pronoun interpreted as the subject or the object, right? Las niñas, the girl, or la maestra, the teacher, in this particular case. And we can plot the rate of subject responses, right? That's just the proportion of time you said subject. And then let's talk about the linguistic context. Does agreement morphology, right, favor the subject or the object? We can plot whether it's favoring, in this case it's going to be favoring the object, but it could also, if it was plural, favor the subject. We can plot subject versus object, which one is favored by the agreement. So again, just to make that explicit, we can favor the subject in this case by making that plural, or we could favor the object by making it singular. And does the pronoun form favor the subject or the object? So it turns out that the null form tends to favor the subject, as we might recall from earlier, while the overt form, a in this particular case, favors the object, right? So we can look at that, whether our overt form, or whether, our pronoun form favors the subject or favors the object. And then finally, we can ask if the connective, the discourse connective is what it's technically called, but fine. Y después, and then, does that favor the subject or the object, right? That's our third variable here. And so y después is going to favor the subject, porque, because is actually going to favor the object. So these are our variables, right, that affect, we think, whether you're going to interpret something, or the rate at which you're going to interpret something as the subject in this particular linguistic context. And that's what we're going to plot here, right? So what we are seeing are the behavior patterns of children versus adults. And of course, there's a lot going on here, but I just want to highlight a couple of important things. The big qualitative picture for our purposes is that children don't behave like adults. If you sort of look at the overall patterns of things, right? Maybe the 5-year-olds kind of look adult-like in the overall, qualitative pattern, but there are definitely differences, right? Children are not adult-like, certainly at all ages. They need to do something to become adult-like, right? And in particular, younger children for sure seem to differ more, right, in the overall pattern, especially in certain contexts. In this case, using the null form of the pronoun, when you're 3 and 4, get you rather different patterns compared to the adults, especially when you're looking at agreement morphology that's supposed to favor the subject, right? So lots of differences going on. We'd like to try to understand what's causing these differences, right? Something needs to change for children to become adult-like, but what? That is the question.